Hey, everybody. Welcome to the new format, the new Lifetalks format. Hopefully you got all the coffee you wanted and more, and fellowship and handshakes and hellos and all the good stuff. So anyway, we got a good topic today, so I'll turn it over to our moderator.
Good morning. Welcome. We're so glad you're here today. Yes, we have a great topic, which we have talked a little bit on before, but we're going to kind of do a little bit twist on it.
Oh, we're going to twist it up.
We're going to twist it. Yes. Today we're going to talk about peace that transforms. So as you know, we've talked a little bit about shalom. It is in Christ that everything is as it should be. So that's the essence of the biblical word shalom. I'm going to have to turn my chair. Yeah. I'm right up against that speaker.
Let me
I feel like we're really close, and I'm going to fall off, and I'm nervous, and I turn around and look at you, and I'm like, just going to go right on over. That would not be good this morning as we talk about shalom and everything as it should be, because that's not how it should be. Okay, so this is a deep biblical concept rooted in the word, like I said, shalom, everything as it should be. Peace that's not just calm, but complete wholeness and restoration. But let's be real. We live in a world today that doesn't feel as it should be. In our families, in our churches, in our news feeds, our social media will tell you that things are not as they should be. When things are broken, our instinct is often to react, to fix it, to control it, to argue about it, or for some of us to retreat. But Jesus reject it. But Jesus offers a different way because he is the Prince of Peace. And when we come to him, not just with our problems, but for his presence, we find that the peace that transforms us from the inside out. So today we're going to explore about abiding in Jesus and how it can lead us redemptively in a not so peaceful world that we live in. So let's start.
I love people who can fix things. I love people who have the ability when things are broken that they take great pride and joy in taking it and making it functional again. Right. There's an ancient Japanese art. I don't have it. It just popped into my head as I was talking about it, so I don't know what it is. Perhaps Paige Lorman could help us. But there's an ancient Japanese art where they take a broken, expensive, like a valuable vase or whatever, and they take it, and it's a process of actually putting it back together. Do you know what it's? Have you ever seen that? What is it? Kintsugi? Yeah, Kitsuki. Is that what it is? Suzuki?
Something Ziki.
We're in the ballpark.
Yeah.
Ziki?
Yeah. Redemptive tsunami.
But isn't that where they put the gold?
Say it again.
Right?
Yeah. Right. So I love that thing.
You do.
I do. Well, here's the really cool thing about that is the concept is it's too valuable to either replace or throw away. And the value isn't just a dollar value. Right. Like you might have the money. You might say, holy cow, it's a $5,000 vase. Well, you may have such an overflow and abundance of money that, you can replace the $5,000 vase, whatever. Yeah. But the value in things is much more than just their commercial value, right? Their resale value. And I think this is important because this idea in this Japanese tradition is to take something that's valuable and to beautify it by redeeming it. By taking it and actually not trying to hide the cracks. Not trying to hide the broken elements of it, but to actually explore taking those things and exploiting what is obviously broken and use it to create a beautiful reproduction. And I love that, because in a disposable culture, we've really become, I believe, we've become sort of habitually geared towards just throwing it away and going to get a new one. You know, if it doesn't work, it's going to cost me as much money to fix it as it, you know. But I love people who have things that are old and they still run well and they still, like, I don't need a new one. This is just fine. Yeah. Right? And so I think there's a lot of components about culture and our society and the way we view things that affect the way, whether consciously or subconsciously, the way we view our relationships and whatever. If I can throw away, I mean, these are disposable cups that you guys have in front of you, nice as they are. They're attractive, but certainly you're not going to take those home and wash them. You're certainly not going to potentially reuse them, at least not except in the short term. You know, you just throw it away and go get you a new one and so on. And we better not do that with people. We better have a mindset that says which this is the thing. We've never talked about this. We've talked about shalom, but we haven't talked about this. And I think this is the important thing about what we're talking about today, is not the idea of shalom, but the idea that Jesus has given us the capacity to, in him, make everything as it should be, even if it currently isn't.
Yeah. One thing that I was praying about this morning, and I've been thinking about it all week, is that one of the things that God celebrates so much is forward progress. In the Garden of Eden, God gave humans a mission, right, to fill the earth, to multiply, to subdue it. And so even when God created everything and said that it's good, he didn't say that it's entirely finished in its mission.
True, right.
So humans had a work to do. There was forward progress. There was forward momentum.
It was good. It was good. Therefore, in what context?
Yeah, in the context of, it was everything as it should be.
It was currently in a state that God wanted it to be in.
That he wanted it to be in. And it was still going to progress and expand according to that plan.
Right.
So it wasn't static.
So it won't, at one point it won't be as it is, but
right.
it will be continued unfolding good.
Yes. So I was thinking about Charlotte, our almost 2-year-old. She was trying to draw the other day. And this applies to what you're saying.
Yeah.
She was trying to draw the other day, and there was a little stick figure, and she was trying to draw a smiley face. Well, when she took the crayon and drew, it didn't look like a smiley face, but we celebrated it because it was progress.
Yeah.
We celebrate the progress, not that everything is to the fullest of what it's going to be, but in this stage of Charlotte's life, it's everything as it should be. And I think that's how we have to look at each other. When we see the brokenness of our world, when we see things that are not as it should be, we should celebrate the movement towards God's plan, toward his purpose, toward his perfect work. And even though today I'm not everything that I hope to one day be, we celebrate that, you know what, God is still moving us forward.
And in as much as in the dysfunction of the fall, things may currently not be as they should be, and yet we have this beautiful scripture that says, ye which are spiritual, restore such a one.
Yeah.
The biblical teaching is always redemptive. It's either celebrating the current state of shalom, or moving what is not in a state of shalom in that direction. And this is the thing that I think I'm going to be preaching I'm going to stay off of this because I'm going to be preaching in the 11 o'clock. But we're living in a culture that increasingly finds satisfaction in making online diatribes of rebuking things, rebuking it. It's not the way it should be. Okay, good. I'm glad you recognize that. Now, what are you going to do to re-shalom it? You have a responsibility to re-shalom it. You have a responsibility to help make it. And here's the deal. This is a great little piece in counseling. In counseling, you're trained to tell someone they're not your responsibility. You don't have the power to change them. You have the power to change you. So you change you. And then work toward getting shalom for yourself. And then helping that spread. I'm riffing off of your garden expansion. Right? You see what I'm saying? I'm riffing off of his garden expansion concept here that you can be in shalom even though nothing around you is. And that's very hard. That's hard for me.
Well, I think when you're talking about people online too, I think the problem is, and we have to think about ourselves, are we actually recognizing the issue with like things aren't as they should be according to God or according to how we like? True. Because a lot of times you see people go on the internet and do those whole things, and it's really not necessarily like how it should be. It's how I wish they would be more like me, or this is how I perceive, or
because we don't see things from God's perspective. So like, think about Charlotte's scribbled drawing. That didn't look like a smiley face. I could sit and look at that drawing and say, here's the 800 things that was wrong with her drawing.
That's so true.
But God looks at it and says, progress. Forward movement.
Failing forward is something that it's really weird. Like in one sense of drawing a smiley face, it was a fail. But it wasn't in as much as at her particular station, she was doing it to the best of her ability, which, by the way, gets into the Izot Gap thing. That in the Izot Gap, this is the thing that I love about the Izot Gap, is that we can have shalom in the Izot Gap concept. For those of you that are like, what is the Izot Gap? Right? This is so crazy because in the old sanctuary, I probably taught. How long did I teach on the Izot Gap, y'all? Oh my Lord! It might have been like 7 months.
Still teaching.
Year
you
thing.
just called it.
We're in a series this year, but no, for real, it was like. But the Izot Gap, the concept of the Izot Gap is that what it ought to be. We in our human observation, right? You could look at it and say this is what it ought to be, and you can go to the perfect example and say that's what it ought to be. And right, like with Charlotte, you could go to the perfect example and say this is what a smiley face ought to look like. But in the progress process, where she is moving toward what it ought to be. And in the Izot Gap, what we've learned is that we celebrate. What do we celebrate? We celebrate anyone who is denying what it was, who has turned toward another example of repentance, right? Who has turned away from the way it was or the direction they were going or how they did it, and they've turned and they've moved towards how it ought to be. And they're reaching toward and moving toward what it ought to be, right? So in the Izot gap, you could have some people that have a long way to go between where it is and where it ought to be, and you could have some people that have a very short distance to go, and neither of them are better than the other in God's context. The only thing that God says is that the only thing that you can't celebrate is when someone turns their back to the ought and moves by simply justifying the is. And we don't justify, we apply grace as we move toward the ought. And that's redemptive. That's redemptive living. That's God's plan for us. And so this is, and by the way, that there are probably 100 spiritual biomarkers that identify what it ought to be. And you may have 10 biomarkers that are way off from what it ought to be and 90 that are pretty close. But somebody else may have a different 10. You see what I'm saying? So somebody else may be more naturally gracious. It's just their personality. Somebody may just have a more natural, positive outlook on life. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. Like just by nature, by personality, they may have a more positive outlook on life. And you may have somebody else that's like Eeyore. Everything's broke and getting broker. Do you know what I'm saying? Right? You could be like Eeyore, and that's just your personality. Have you ever met somebody like that? Like that's just their personality. It's just, it's just like, anyway. But the thing about it is that person has a long way to go in that specific area. So it depends on what do you want to, like you said, Kaylin, it depends on what you want to focus on. It depends on what you call, like it could be your own self-defined good. It could be your own self-defined ought. Jesus is the ought. Jesus is the ought.
Yeah, I think you have to define that first before you can even talk about everything as it should be.
Right.
Because the should be is not based on anything about you at all. It's all about God.
And
in it.
the shalom, the shalom is only in him.
Right.
Like until he redeems this whole world. Right. And there's a new heaven and new earth and we've got new bodies and everything is completely redeemed, then the only place that everything is as it should be is in him and in his kingdom. Yes. So that's why we pray, thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven, because what are we doing? We are praying the ought into our current unought. Distraught. Dystrophy.
We have a few scriptures here that bases this. Isaiah 9:6 says, Jesus is the Prince of Peace. Yeah. John 14:27, peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Ephesians, he himself is our peace. Colossians,
which one was that?
Ephesians 2:14. Colossians 1:19 and 20, through Jesus, God reconciles all things to himself, making peace by his blood. So there's the biblical foundation that he is peace.
Man, my theology brain wants to stop right there for the next 8 minutes. Like that one right there. Say that again.
Through Jesus, God reconciles all things to himself, making peace by his blood.
Golly. Through Jesus. It's only brought into reconciliatory peace in Jesus Christ through the mechanism of his blood.
Yes, so good.
I like Paul, Colossians, mic drop thing. It's amazing.
That's so good. So a life application. Can you think of a time, and maybe you want to share, maybe you don't want to share. I'm all good with that, but you can be thinking about it. Can you think of a time when you tried to restore peace by controlling or by fixing or by confronting and it didn't work? What might it have looked like to turn to Jesus first? We've all had moments of striving where we were convinced that peace would come if they would change, or if this problem would get fixed, or if we had more control. So this honestly makes us look inward and think honestly in ourselves, an honest reflection. Was there a time when your good intentions, maybe they were good, to make peace actually created more tension?
I don't know if I have like a specific example, but I think early on in youth ministry, this was something that took me a little while to learn. Because when you're working with teenagers, there is a lot of turmoil. There's a large lack of peace during that time in their life because it's such a, I mean, there doesn't have to be, but there often is more like turmoil, and because it's a season of change and growth. And so I just remember seeing kids going on a certain path or doing certain things. And even though this isn't necessarily my personality all the time, in that context, it would instantly be like, I've got to go tell them. I need to go, oh, they're doing this. I need to go confront it right away. But I found that especially with teenagers and probably just with people in general, that the more you like confront it head on, probably the more they're going to be trying to express their newfound or desired independence, and it's just going to push them even further in the other direction. You see that with like parents and in relationships, and you're like, he's so bad for you, and she's like, he's the love of my life, and then it's the Romeo and Juliet thing. And so I think that it really took me a while to learn that the more that you step back, you just love and you pray and you show with by example.
I love that. And the next question is, how might turning to Jesus first in prayer, in surrender, in stillness have changed your posture or your approach to those things? I would too. Somebody want to raise your hand and answer? We'll be really brave today. Does anybody want to raise your hand and answer? How might turning to Jesus first in prayer, in surrender, in stillness have changed your posture, I don't know who asked that, or approach to confronting or something that you confronted that caused more tension?
So true. It's true. So true. It's so true, because I think that's true in that we a couple of things to highlight there. Number one is that we're much better at focusing on what we look at. It's hard to focus on something you're not looking at. And I think secondly, anything that disturbs my peace or my sense of as it should be, when I go to Jesus, there is some element of it that causes Jesus to cause me to say, like what's your motivation? Like, what is your motivation? Are you just simply responding out of, like, to confront something sometimes is a carnal response to trying to recapture my peace, not peace for them. And so this is the thing. Jesus didn't come to be served. And so I look at it and say, if I'm going to be, so Jesus can, Greek word. Oh, no.
No help from me.
There's I was trying to think of the Greek word for intercessor. No. Anyway, there's a Greek word for intercessor, and it's often used to talk about how you overlay your mastery on something. So if you have like somebody who's learning to do archery, the master will put their arms around it, and they'll help them to know how far to draw back, how to aim, all of those things. That's the word for intercessor. It literally means to overlay mastery. And so when Jesus comes into my life, what I have to do is I need him to overlay, because he's mastered this. He was never sucked into chaos, and he mastered it. And so Jesus is going to come and overlay his mastery in my life, which first has a component of changing me. So that Jesus didn't go in and say, you need to be more blah, blah, blah. Jesus actually took the fault and failure and the sin on himself to produce the opportunity for everyone else to be made whole.
Yeah. He wasn't trying to produce peace on the outside so that he could feel peace on the inside. He had peace on the outside, and so he could address the outside to produce to work to produce peace out there. It's outside in versus inside out living. If when we start to get in a place of turmoil on the inside, trying to control situations, manipulate, micromanage, those are often just manifestations of the fact that we don't really have peace on the inside. So true. Trying to control people, try to control situations, try to manipulate outcomes. What is that? I don't really feel okay until I make everything out there okay.
Well, and that goes to the heart check. Why do we so often feel responsible for restoring order ourselves rather than turning to Jesus? What fears or beliefs might be underneath?
Sorry I didn't read your notes more thoroughly.
It's all good. Hey, we're all right on track.
No, that's good though.
So the why beneath our reactions. What's the why? Yeah. Often it's fear of chaos, fear of losing control, fear of being hurt, or maybe it's pride.
Frustration.
Maybe it's pride. We think we know more. We think we know what's best.
Ouch.
Yeah, in Romans it says, don't be wise in your own eyes, but be peaceable with all men. As long as it's up to you. As much as you can do about it, you keep peace. But when you're wise in your own eyes, probably not going to be very peaceful.
That's a good point. And if it's not just up to you. Yeah. Now the question, what a great sidebar discussion. If it's not just up to you, then how do you have peace?
Yeah. Sometimes you can't bring peace into a situation. You only can bring inner peace. I think it also is tied in with the renewing of your mind. This is a great opportunity when you feel those ways to pull away and allow God to transform your mind. I saw a really cool study about how like science is finally catching up to the Bible, and how like for so long they said the mind can't change, but they're finding that the mind is like ever changing, constantly creating new pathways, what you think about and what you focus on. And so especially in these scenarios, you can remind yourself of those biblical truths.
So good.
So good. I think that as we end, we think about redemptive living, because that's kind of where we started, and it's countercultural, the way we live to how the world lives, right? We're not striving, but we're spirit empowered. We have redemptive presence with Jesus. Living redemptively means we become ambassadors of peace and restoration, not reaction and division, which I love what you said. It's when we reset and get alone and say, all right, let's get in alignment with
recalibrate.
him. Right.
and as you close out, I'll just simply personally say that I'll never forget the first time we got ready to go on vacation. And we got ready to go on vacation, and it felt like, I called my pastor, and I'm like, what in the world? I said, does all hell break loose every time you get ready to go on vacation?
Every single time.
Does all hell break loose every time? And my pastor said to me, he said, it's a ploy of the devil. He said, it's too common that this happens. It's a ploy of the devil. And you know what he said? He said, thank the Lord that the enemy has allowed you to see that your sense of continuity in the church is too built on you being responsible for it. Back off and just say, you know what, Jesus? I'm not going to let the enemy push me into unbelief that Jesus isn't in control of his church. And if I go away, it's all going to fall apart. Right. Jesus is like, look, upon this rock, I will build my church. But I'm going to tell you something right now. There are pieces of frustration and unbelief. And God has to come in and confront this unbelief and say, you don't really believe I'm in control of my church, do you? You know what I mean? I had a...
Or you don't really believe God's in control of your life. Or you don't really believe you can take it personal. You really don't believe God can bring the peace. So the fruit of that unbelief may look like, I'm just going, Bible said, go to them. Yep. The Bible said, and so you may find some kind of a biblical justification and for your fruit. And the reality is actually the root behind that is an unbelief that God's really in control. You know, I don't have to get up and I don't have to get on, some platform or whatever and rebuke, all of the pastors of America are going to, have you ever seen those videos? Have you ever seen those videos? The Church of America is the Church of Laodicea and the pastors are taking them to hell and, blah, 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 blah. But you talked about pride. Like, don't forget, the Bible says that the man of God may be thoroughly furnished unto every good work for reproof, rebuke, correction, instruction, and righteousness. If you've not been given that authority, you better be careful wielding that authority. Yeah. Okay, so closing reflection. We often think peace will come when everything around us finally settles down. Yeah. But the gospel flips that idea because peace, like you all said, begins in us because Jesus is with us. Jesus doesn't just give peace, he is peace. And the more we abide in him, the more we become people of wholeness, healing, and holy presence. So ask yourself, ask Jesus, where am I striving instead of abiding? Where do you want me to give peace? Not by changing my situation, but by meeting me in it. And he will. So invite his spirit today to empower you to live redemptively in the world and have peace. We can have peace. It's 10:36. We are 6 minutes over. So this new thing is going to be hard.
We're going to have to.
Wow. Yeah. We're going to have to not talk as much.
No. Or
we'll start narrowing it down. We'll do like when you get your master's and your doctorate, you have to start narrowing your papers down, right? And you have a lot of words, but they have to really mean something.
Who was it that wrote a letter that said,
Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, I would have made it shorter, but I didn't have time.
But I didn't have time. So we'll work on that. So still send your thoughts. I'd love to hear your thoughts on peace and how you can live redemptively with peace in your heart. So send those. All right, it's time to go. It's time to go have prayer.
It's on the screen.
Oh, yes.
You got your prompt on the screen.
I do. Thank you for that prompt. So it's prayer time from 10:45 to 11. No, it's prayer time from 10:30 to 10:45. And then from 10:45 to 11, we can go have fellowship.
You have 8 minutes.
You have 8 minutes. Pray. It's time.
Pray.
Pray. Everybody, start praying. You have 8 minutes.